Hello and welcome back to this lecture. In this lecture, we will be discussing about first class functions and higher order functions. So I have declared two functions which are dog sound and cat sound, which simply returns a string woof and meow. So basically what I am going to be showing us here now is how to work with these functions and how to differentiate a first class function from an higher order function. So we'll start by working with a first class function. First class function. So you can see that this function now, we have a simple function that basically returns a string. In this case, this dog sound returns a string woof and this cat sound returns a string meow. So what we are doing and how to recognize a first class function is that if you notice that we assigned this function to a variable. Do you understand? We are not calling these functions in this case, but we are assigning them into another variable. So in this case, we simply assembled the dog sound function and the cat sound function into a list. So you can see we can store functions in a list because they are first class functions. So we can simply store them in a list, just like we are storing a variable in a list. Basically, when we have first class functions too can be seen as a variable and we can store them in a list and manipulate them in any way, but we are not actually calling them. It is different to do this. It is different to write dog sound like this and we should call it. To call the function, you have to add the parentheses. So we are not calling them, but we are assigning them to another variable. So let me show you how you can assign a first class function into another variable. So let me create a variable, call it bull dog sound. What I'm doing here is I created a variable, called it bulldog sound, signed. So what I did here is that I created a variable bulldog sound and I assigned this first class function into this bulldog sound variable. So let me comment out every other code I have just to show you what I'm trying to do here. So now that I have assigned this function to this variable, let me try using this bulldog sound variable I've created. I can now call this function. So it is just like calling this function directly using its variable name. In this case, it's just like I am changing the function name, but I'm not actually changing it, but I can now call this function using this new variable name that I have just assigned it to. So by calling it now and printing it, we are using a return statement within the function. So to actually see a result, you have to use the print function on it. So I am printing out what this bulldog sound is returning, which should be woof. You understand? Since I have just assigned the value, since I've just assigned this first class function to this bulldog sound variable. So now to call it, I will just use this parenthesis and print it out. So now let me run this code. You can see we have woof. So basically I have assigned the value of this function to this new variable, just like renaming the variable. Now with that variable name, I can call the function. So this is like a characteristic of a first class function. You can assign them to variables. So when we have that, that's just so since you understand this, so you should understand that we can now, using that same knowledge, we can assign variables or we can assemble them into a list as list items and assign them to another function. So this list now contains functions, basically two functions, dog sound and cat sound. So we can even look through that list that we have just created. So you can see now that we are now trying to we are trying to look through these functions in this animal sound list. So by doing for animal sound in animal sounds, print animal sound. So basically the new variable name we are assigning to this our function now is animal sound. Do you understand? The same way we assigned bulldog sound to this function name that we are assigning it. So we are just like giving it another variable name in this case, and we are printing it out. We are calling the function and we are printing out the output. You can see we can call the function stored in the list. So this is how we can manipulate a first class function. A first class function is any function that we can assign a variable to and pack into a list, pack into a tuple, and do all sorts of manipulation with it. So now moving over to what an higher order function is. So now we have another type of function called higher order function. Do you understand? So the difference between an higher order function and a first class function is that an higher order function is a function that can call a first class function. So let me create a simple function that is called make animal sound now. So what I am doing here is make animal sound will take a parameter, and the parameter will be another function. So let me give this parameter, let me name this parameter animal sound. Do you get? So and basically what we will be doing here is we will just be returning the animal sound which is a parameter. So do you understand what we did here now? This higher order function is a function that takes in another function as a parameter. So you can do this. So now let me just make this more interesting by doing a simple writing additional conditional statement that if animal sound equals woof. What I'm just trying to do is trying to connect what we have here to this so that it can be more explanatory. So we should print okay, the animal is a dog, else we should just I'm just trying to keep this function simple. We should print the animal is a cat. So what we are trying to do here is okay, let me change this function name. We should change it to identify animal sound. Basically this function helps us identify an animal sound. So let me cancel this return statement that I have here. The function doesn't return anything, just prints out the animals, like just tells us, just prints out the string. So now we have this. You can see the difference now that this is an higher order function because it takes in another function as parameter. Basically we've been working with functions, and parameters that most functions takes in can be integers, floating point numbers, strings, and so on. But an higher order function is a function that takes in another function as its own parameter. So to work with this now, we simply do this. We have so to call this identify animal sound function now. So the argument we'll be passing now would be another function. So the kind of function we can pass into an higher order function would be a first class function. So we have two first class functions in this case. The first one is cat sound, which is a function that we have declared up here. So you can see we have cat sound, which is a function. So we are passing this function into this function now. So this is an higher order function, while this is a first class function. So I am passing this first class function into this higher order function as a parameter, as an argument. So now when I run our code, we should get a message, a print message or a print statement that says the animal is a cat. Do you understand? By just passing this cat sound as a parameter, we are now trying to check if the animal sound is wolf or if the animal sound is any other sound, which basically prints out this animal is a cat. This other print statement we are seeing is coming from this loop. So if I comment out this loop, we should be able to get a more reasonable kind of message. So if I call this identify animal sound with the dog sound, we should get this animal is a dog. Do you understand now? So this is an higher order function, while these are first class functions. So let's try that again for the last time. So you can see we have the animal is a cat coming from this cat sound, and we have the animal is a dog coming from this second function call. So I hope with this lecture you now understand the difference between a first class function and an higher order function. See you in the next lecture.